as we sit in what looks like my hoarder basement.
Why don't we go this direction?
Sure.
So the light is falling on you, not behind you.
I don't know, isn't that like the Hollywood starlet?
That is...
I get backlit. So, first let me tell you the story of our cables.
Yes, please.
It was the fall of 2002. We had just formed our band, I believe, if I have my timeline right. And everyone kind of was cobbling together equipment. And you guys had, of course, we were younger. And, of course, we had the cheapest, most garbagest, flakiest cables of all time in inappropriate lengths. And so I decided that for Christmas of that year, I would do two things. I would gift each of you two things. One, a tuner pedal, for obvious reasons. The second is a pair of cables. I think I did one 10-footer and one 15-footer or something like that. And so that fall, winter, whatever, I bought red Canair GS6 cable. I bought red specifically because we were afraid someone would accidentally take our cables. So we bought a garish color so that we would always know which ones were ours, because is yours the red one? Because mine is. And so I don't think anyone ever walked off with one of our cables. So in 2002, I built that set of cables. Some of them are still in operation. It is checks notes 2025. And just built them simply, but did a little bit of research on the parts just to make sure I didn't buy anything cheap. Because the whole point was, I want to build these things, and then hopefully we'll just really never have to do this again. Because our band isn't going to last more than 20 years. And so that was my goal, and goal was achieved. I'm not sure any of them ever actually broke. An amp, something might have rolled over one of them.
We dropped a cymbal, edge first on one of them.
Force majeure, act of God, no refund available. But yes, within all reasonable situations, the cables performed as expected. But one of the reasons that I purchased that Canair cable is that it is appropriate both for instrument leads and for speaker leads. I think they must be British or something. Anyway, they use Britishisms, but so in a pinch, the guitar cable could also double as the connection between an amp and a cabinet. And so that kind of extra utility is valued in a context where someone's always forgetting something or something is always breaking. So that is the story of our cables.
Perfect.
Now for these cables, tonight's cable is being manufactured at a 6-foot length for use between a child's bass guitar and a child's audio interface for practicing bass guitar at home and not bothering anyone. And so the materials you will need, if you wish to follow along with what I'm doing, is you will need some bulk instrument cable. This is a 2-conductor cable, ground and a signal. There are 2 cables I would recommend. I like the Canair GS6. I just feel like it's got a nice hand feel. It works well. It's durable. That's what I used originally. And it's served me well over the years. And there's also a Mogami part, which I believe is 25-24. Both of those are right around $1 a foot. You may be able to shop around and get a deal, but that's about what I'm paying in 2025. And then for connectors, there are many, many, many 1/4-inch jacks that are perfectly suitable. There is a Neutrik Rion one that is all metal, that is perfectly serviceable, but I tend to stick with the Switchcraft 280, which is the classic 1/4-inch mono jack. I just looked at the Switchcraft copy earlier, and it said it is recommended for situations where physical abuse may occur, which seems to cover most band contexts I've ever operated in. And so beyond that, I also believe that in using heat shrink, the outer diameter of both of those cables, I believe, is right under 1/4 of an inch. So I use 1/4 inch shrink. But that's it. Cable, jack, shrink. Shrink optional, probably. The first step is you need to strip off the outer jacket of the cable. I don't know exactly how far back to strip it. I can only tell you what I do, which is that I use a razor blade, because there's always one of these lying around, and I go the distance between the thick metal part and the distance of the blade and just flip it up and just go around like that. That seems to work pretty good as a measurement. And then once you strip off the outer jack on these cables, both the Mogami and the Kinnair have an intricate braid that the copper wiring that carries the ground signal is wrapped all around, I think for durability and for reduced capacitance or something, who knows. But the next thing you need to do is basically debraid that copper wiring. And this is the most labor intensive part, which tells you how not labor intensive this whole process basically is. And once you do that, you'll take all that copper wire and you'll twist it into a single sort of stranded cable off to the side. Then also on both the Mogami and the Kinnair, I believe, there's a little black, like, outer jacket around the inner connector. It's like a little sleeve almost, and I believe that's conductive. Again, to reduce handling noise or something. But what you need to do, the issue is if that black jacket ever were to make electrical contact with the inner conductor, you would get a short. And so you don't want that. So you have to remove that outer inner jacket back to where it can never make electrical contact with the inner wire. And then finally, you will strip off the jacket around the inner cable. This only goes back about 1/4 of an inch, usually. And then what I do is I will tin, apply solder to the inner wire, the outer braided wire that I've wound into one little chunk. Then I will cut back, and you can do this before you tin it as well, cut back what becomes the ground to about where I have stripped the inner jacket. That just tends to about be the geometry I'm working with. Also, at this point, if you have not already done so, make sure that you put the outer shell of the jack and your heat shrink onto the cable end before you solder the jack on. I cannot stress this enough, people. I've done this many times. At least 50% of the time, I have screwed this up. And then all you really have to do is apply some solder or sort of tin the contacts on the jack. And then I'll usually start with the ground and solder the ground to the jack, flip the cable over and solder the inner signal wire to the jack, the tab that represents the tip. And at that point, you can kind of clean things up if you did anything wrong or if there's any errant solder or anything. You crimp down. There's 2 little metal prongs at the back of the Switchcraft 280. Other jacks have this as well. You sort of crimp those down into the outer jacket of the remaining cable. And that's just good mechanical. It'll make it so you can never pull the wiring out by any accident. So that's one physical way to do that. Then the next thing is you slide the shrink over all that, heat it up, let it cool nice and straight, and then just screw the rest of the jack on, and you're pretty much done at that point. One other sort of tip is that people will sell little things to hold the jack in place while you solder it. I have bought all of those things, and for my money, nothing works better than a pair of vice grips.
All right.
And that is what we expect because on these there's no third pin, so ring and sleeve are going to be connected together, which if you were doing a regular TRS cable it would just be the diagonal, but right. This is correct.
Look at that.
Look at that, it works.
Any opinions about some of the more exotic or expensive cables available for purchase?
I would say I have friends who have had very good luck with Rattlesnake, and they seem to be good dudes. So if you are not feeling adventurous, they seem like a good option. I do like the feel in the hand of like a cloth braided cable. I have no idea how well they wear over time. It seems like it could either make them wear better or it could be a thing that frays and discolors and absorbs more goop than your regular, whatever the hell these are, poly something, sort of rubbery, plasticky coating. I think that if you're not willing to pay for a good cable like that and you want something that will last, I think you're just better off building it yourself if you have any of the raw materials you need. I mean, tools you need. A soldering iron, a pair of vice grips, wire strippers. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty low, a razor blade, what have you. But anything with molded plastic jacks or anything like that, it's just gonna die. Within the walled garden that is the pedal board, I will note that it becomes very cost inefficient to make your own cables. You simply cannot do it for the price that you can buy pre-made teeny tiny cables. Those sort of stress-related failures are much less likely to occur, and you don't have to worry about the sort of things that you worry about with between bass player and pedal board, or bass player and amp. But yeah, for those main cables, build it yourself, buy very nice cables, or expect to replace them constantly. I also think that expanding out into other cable types, like mic cables, for example, mic cables I think are even easier to solder because there's just like actual tabs rather than soldering onto a large, like physically heavy jack. Mic cables make yourself, like it's actually cheaper. And I think that holds up until you get to maybe the DB25 D sub cables. I have made a bunch of them myself, but I'm broken inside. Is not it does not spark joy. That's where my do-it-yourself zeal tapers off. I think you have, like with any sort of craft or hobby, you have this sort of initial dilemma of investing in tools. I will say if you're going to invest in anything at quality, a quality soldering iron, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper, a quality soldering iron it'll make your soldering easier. It'll make it less error prone. It will increase your happiness as you do it. And it is a decent investment. Like it's not like $1,000. They're $100 odd. And that $100 odd soldering iron is so much better than the $25 soldering iron. I cannot stress this enough. And so that is the one place where, investing in, if you're going to invest in one decent tool, that's a good one to invest in. Wire strippers and wire cutters and stuff like that, they're wear parts. They die. You don't need to buy fancy ones. If you're young, you should run a fan to extract the solder fumes away from you. Or if you're old, it's too late for you anyway. Cancer's already in you. You can't stop it. I mean, obviously, there's other things too. A good multimeter, like a decent good multimeter, a fluke, like this 177, totally fine. I had an older fluke before this, and then I upgraded to this giant Hewlett-Packard thing. But this cable tester is like $30. It's got XLR, it's got TS, it's got RCA, it's even got TT, tiny telephone jacks if you're making patch cables for a console. It's got MIDI if you're weird. Beyond that, if as a hobbyist sort of musician, DIY person, like, the world's your oyster. There's a million pedals out there that you can build, as I'm trying to prove to the world. And there are also a lot of things that within the guitar context that require soldering, but not a lot of soldering. Replacing pickups, rewiring the jack on your guitar, because those types of things are going to occur. You are going to have a jack go bad on you at some point. And so a little investment allows you to do quite a range of projects within a sort of guitar or hobbyist musician context.
How much fun would you say we're having right now?